the lady parts look angry almost. That said, you do have an interesting line of work, Funkhauser. Well done on
did you
taking
see that
the path.
Did you see that giant
not so well traveled
tattoo there? Did you see
yeah. It's almost like she couldn't grow any down their hair and decided to tattoo some on instead. That's in my humble opinion, not attractive. That's kind of, I'm not into that.
Yeah, and it looks like...
this is actually kind of doing the exact opposite. This is erection killing material for me right here, which is not I guess, out of context. Did you find this attractive when it was happening in front of you?
The first couple of pictures I sent you? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The second pair of pictures...
Yeah. It all seems to be going rather well until what's going on south of the equator is revealed. That should have stayed under wraps. And if it wasn't under wraps, it should have been... it should not have been lit by fluorescent lighting. Go on.
Well, in an unrelated story, Hillary Clinton has come out against torture.
Bill Clinton is quoted as saying, "And how do you explain our marriage?" Go on.
Donald Trump.
Sometimes the Clinton thing lands, sometimes it doesn't. I think that was one of those times when it didn't. But you know what? As Michael Jordan said, all that failure, that brings you closer to success. I count that as, Anyways, go on.
Donald Trump is considering running for president again.
Yeah. Well, he's got my vote. Replied no one I want to be friends with. Go on.
He's a good candidate, and so is his hair. That's all I got. ISIS is using a new weapon called the Scorpion Bomb.
Yeah, the Scorpion Bomb. ISIS are using this new thing. What is it? Well, people who've been hit by the Scorpion Bomb report feeling as if they've been rocked like a hurricane.
I'd like to help you out there with this one, but I don't know any other Scorpion songs.
The winds of change are coming through. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Do I know any other Scorpion songs? I don't think.
Are there any more than two?
Are there any more than the one about being rocked like a hurricane? Oh, no, there's, what's that one? There's no one like you. Oh, I can't wait for a night with you. Yeah. The Scorpions from Germany. We love coming to America. We love your rock music and your pretty girls. Go on.
The Navy has unveiled an underwater drone that can swim like a shark.
Yep. The drone will be used to fight terrorists on surfboards.
Surfboard.
Go on.
President Obama reopened diplomatic relations with Cuba. Have a cigar.
Yeah. These are the two big topics of the day. Obama reopening diplomatic relations with Cuba and the Korean hack of Sony. But yeah, Obama decided to do that. This will definitely help him shake his image as a socialist. Fantastic. Speaking of presidents doing something controversial with Cubans, how is Bill Clinton spending the holidays? Think about it. About it. There it is. Go on.
Does that mean we can smoke these now, though? I mean, I'm glad you asked. And we'll get into that a little later on in the show. And when I say later on, let's talk about, you know what? F it. Let's forget the rest of the news. This is actually fascinating, and I want to make sure we have time to get to it today. So, you can now go to Cuba legally and bring back $100 of cigars as long as you have a good reason. The White House announced major changes to its policy toward Cuba yesterday. In case you haven't been following it, it's the biggest move toward easing our sanctions on Cuba in 50, count them, 50 years. Here are the 5 things that you need to know. 1, it's still technically illegal to visit Cuba just for tourism, but now there's 12 reasons you can legally travel there. Visiting family, government business, journalism, professional research and meetings, and educational activities. Also religious activities, humanitarian work, private foundation work, import-export work, art and athletic performances, clinics and workshops, and, quote, to support the Cuban people, which I guess would include buying cigars. Billionaires and losers both get their asses bailed out, and I'm stuck in the middle like a sucker giving handouts. So I'll give you the leech on the welfare line. I'm busting my ass every day
I ain't even bluffing. This is so fast, and I want mine. I wanna take it off the leash.
iHeartRadio goes one-on-one with Jimmy Page to talk about the beginning of he and Robert Plant's musical partnership.
I had material like Dazed and Confused. I had the whole arrangement together of Baby, I'm Gonna Leave You and the source of the verse. And it actually, I heard it on a Joan Baez in concert record. It's nothing like our version. But I did play him that original one. I thought it was, at the time, I thought it was a traditional song. I didn't know. Because I know that at the time those folk artists were doing lots of traditional songs. And plus she did like 3 in-concert albums. This is one of them, and I heard this track and I thought that's really haunting. And along the way, even it was in the days of the Yardbirds, I'd come up with this, right on the tail end, I'd come up with this whole interpretation of how it could be done. So I got into my house and I was sort of presenting him these sort of things, these ideas, and you know, we had a real good connection because he was, to be fair, even though he said he liked West Coast music or whatever, this clearly was never going to be anything like that, but he was up and open for the sort of things that I was sort of showing him, if you like. You know, I was opening up for him, so that was useful because, to be honest, if he hadn't sort of locked into it, then I'd have been looking for somebody else who was.
Keep listening to iHeartRadio for more Jimmy Page and all your favorite artists.
iHeartRadio goes one-on-one with Mike Rutherford to discuss the benefit of being in a band as opposed to going about it solo.
I think being in a band is quite good because if you get on a line ever, the others 2 or 3 or 4 will kick you back into the right space. So I think it's important to always be like that in a sense, you know. What a wonderful ride it's been, actually.
Keep listening to iHeartRadio for more Mike Rutherford and all your favorite artists.
Delivering fascinating subjects, interesting talk, and boobs and fart jokes. AD on iHeartRadio.
Yeah, oh, let's go. Talking that mess, better act like you know. Oh, let's go tonight. Walk away, punk, yeah, bitch. That's right, I know this. You're nothing but a punk, bitch. You're nothing but a punk, bitch. So walk away, yeah, yeah. So as we were discussing, you can now go to Cuba legally. You can bring back $100 of cigars as long as you got good reasons. See, it's still technically illegal to visit Cuba just for tourism. But you can travel there legally if you're visiting family, going on government, business, journalism, professional research and meetings, educational activities, religious activities, humanitarian work, private foundation work, import-export work, art and athletic performances, clinics and workshops, and quote-unquote support for the Cuban people. If you do go to Cuba, and this is the deal, if you do go to Cuba, you're legally allowed, this is what everybody cares about, you are legally allowed to bring back $400 worth of stuff, including $100 worth of Cuban cigars or Cuban rum. You can have one, you can't have both. $100 worth. Funkhauser, have you ever smoked cigars?
Yeah, once or twice. With my old ex-girlfriend's father who came from Armenia, you have to smoke these.
Ah, interesting. Do you know what I mean, when they were legal, obviously the street value is going to be a lot higher, but do you have any idea how many cigars $100 gets you in Cuba if you're bringing them back?
I don't know. I know the expensive ones here are like upwards to like $40, $20, $20, $40, something like that.
Right. So $100, I mean, I don't know. It depends what the exchange rate is like in Cuba, but I would imagine $100 is not going to get you a ton of cigars. Not enough to go back and sell them in America.
Yeah, probably not.
For the first time ever, U.S. credit cards will work in Cuba. And you can send $2,000 every 3 months to family members in Cuba. That's up from $500. And the U.S. will open an embassy in Cuba for the first time since 1961. Very interesting times. And look, there's people that are not supporters of Obama. I'm certainly not what you would call a supporter of Obama. But there's people that are using this as an opportunity to jump all over him and be like, we knew he was a commie. We knew he was a commie. And I'm not saying it's a good idea or a bad idea. But
I wonder if in some way, shape, or form, do you remember when we last ran into trouble with Cuba? It was that little thing, the Cuban Missile Crisis, that involved the Russians. And I gotta suppose that some part of what's going on right now has to do with heightened concern with regard to what Vladimir Putin's up to in this day and age, as we're getting ready to get plunged back into finger on the button, 1980s style Cold War. And Putin's just this incredible denier of everything. Like, you're annexing other countries. No, I'm not. I was here shirtless, karate kicking grizzly bears the whole time. Wasn't me. I don't know what you're talking about, but you're doing it. No, nothing to see here. Move right along, or move right along. Nothing to see here.
Today, the United States of America is changing its relationship with the people of Cuba. In the most significant changes in our policy in more than 50 years, we will end an outdated approach that for decades has failed to advance our interests, and instead, we will begin to normalize relations between our two countries. First, I've instructed Secretary Kerry to immediately begin discussions with Cuba to reestablish diplomatic relations that have been severed since January of 1961. Second, I've instructed Secretary Kerry to review Cuba's designation as a state sponsor of terrorism. Third, we are taking steps to increase travel, commerce, and the flow of information to and from Cuba. This is fundamentally about freedom and openness, and also expresses my belief in the power of people-to-people engagement. I do not expect the changes I'm announcing today to bring about a transformation of Cuban society overnight, but I am convinced that through a policy of engagement, we can more effectively stand up for our values and help the Cuban people help themselves as they move into the 21st century.
Yeah. Through a spirit of openness, we can stop ourselves getting nuked by Russian nukes that happen to be in Cuba at the time, I think is what you're hearing if you read between the lines. Senator Marco Rubio ripped Obama a new orifice after he made that announcement.
Today's announcement from the White House is so profoundly disappointing. In short, what these changes are going to do is they will tighten this regime's grip on power for decades to come. But this president has proven today that his foreign policy is more than just naive. It is willfully ignorant of the way the world truly works. This president is the single worst negotiator we have had in the White House in my lifetime, who has basically given the Cuban government everything it asked for. I anticipate I'll be the chairman of the Western Hemisphere Subcommittee of Foreign Relations, and I anticipate we're going to have a very interesting couple of years discussing how you're going to get an ambassador nominated and how you're going to get an embassy funded. Basically, for this government under Barack Obama to unilaterally give up all the things they gave up in exchange for nothing on the side of democracy is unacceptable in my mind. I'm committed to doing everything I can to unravel as many of these changes as possible. This Congress is not going to lift the embargo.
Yeah, it's these big, sweeping, general, chest-thumping speeches that everybody's making. I mean, look, Rubio makes some very cogent points, but it's the way, the speaking in absolutes that politicians are starting to do now, the chest beating as though you are a fountain of all knowledge and wisdom and there is no way but your way that politicians are engaging in now. You know what this is? This is the run-up to the election. This is like the last game of preseason football. And what happens during the last game of preseason football? Well, they don't want to use any of the real players because they got to play real games in a week. So it's a bunch of B-string, never will be, never was, snowball's chance in hell of making a living at doing this long-term football players. And what are they doing during the last game of preseason football? They're all attempting to make these huge, unwieldy, ridiculous plays, which I got to be honest is kind of interesting to watch, usually because it results in abject failure. Like he was trying to do what? Sure. Oh, okay. Yeah. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to rush for 87 yards and score a touchdown. No, you're not. You're going to trip over your untied shoelaces and your career is going to go up in a poof of logic. That said, this is what's going on. This is basically a bunch of B-string never was politicians attempting to make big plays because they think they might be going to the show. And in the vast majority of the situations, you're not going to the show.
President Obama announced that the U.S. is working to improve its relationship with Cuba in an effort to normalize full diplomatic relationship. Yeah. For instance, today they released one of our